Hey guys, I'm back with another video, and in this video I'm going to show you how to implement Auth in .NET MAUI Blazor hybrid application or login flow in .NET MAUI Blazor hybrid application. So what I have done so far is I simply created a .NET MAUI Blazor hybrid application, and here I have created these DTOs. We have login request DTO which has username and password. Okay, these require data annotations. It's up to you if you want to validate client side using data annotation validator. Then I have this logged in user. So this is going to give the information of the currently logged in user. I'm having this integer ID, string name, string email. You can extend this to add whatever properties you want to have for the logged in user. And it has these two helper methods. First, this is this instance method, which is converting this logged in user to a claims array. Here we are just having new claims, then claim types.name identifier, which is for ID, then claim types.name and email. So it is returning us these claims. We'll see where we need these. Then after this, we have this method from claims principal. So these two methods are opposite of each other. Here we are converting logged in user to list of claims, and here this principal, it has identity, it has claims. So basically it has the claims array already. Here we are converting those claims arrays back to the logged in user. Here we are first checking if principal.identity.is authenticated is true. That means this principal is authenticated. That means we can grab the information from the claims. We have the claims and we can get the logged in users information from here. Here we are just getting the ID, name and email using the same claim types which we used here. Name identifier, name, email, and we are simply constructing this logged in user instance here and returning it. After that, I have this login response DTO, which is going to have the response back from the API. Here we have logged in users information and a token. This could be JWT token. In most of the cases, we use JWT token, so it could be any token. Then what I have done, I have this iAuth API. I have created this iAuth API, which is an interface where it has this one method login async, which gets login request DTO as a parameter and returns a task of login response. Okay. If you are using Refit, you can directly consume it, just adding the Refit uh, post attribute here. Or if you are using any other form of API consumption, maybe HTTP client or HTTP client factor, whatever means, you can use this, or you can change it to whatever you want to. Then I have the simple implementation of this iAuth API, this mock auth API, which just has this, gets this login response, just have this dummy information and just returns from here, so that we can directly use it. Because in this video I'm not going to show you the API part, but I have this mock auth API which returns, so you would consider it. We can have some delay here as well. Let's have an async, some small delay. We'll say await task dot delay, let's say 1 second delay, and then we can directly return this. All right, then in MAUI program.cs, I have simply registered this iAuth API with this mock auth, and then I have created in components pages this login page. Okay, with this slash login URL. Here I have this login model of type login request DTU, which has that username and password. Then I have this edit form with this model which we created here. And on valid submit, we are going to call this login async method where I don't have anything yet. Then here we have input text, type password. So username, password, and then this submit button for login. So this is all what I have done so far. And in layout nav menu, I have added one more link for this login. Just so this is how the application looks. The basic same stuff, nothing fancy, nothing changed. Here we have this login. If I click on this login, we can see this login form, which is this login page. This login page, simple. Right now it does not do anything. We just have this data annotation validator validation, nothing else. So now we'll implement the auth flow or auth in this .NET MAUI Blazor hybrid application. Okay. So because this is a Blazor application, in Blazor we need to have one package for auth. So we are going to install that package. Right click, manage NuGet packages. And here we are going to have that Microsoft ASP.NET Core components WebAssembly authentication. Okay, and this is .NET 8. I did not use .NET 9 because in .NET 9 the Blazor web view that is broken for this API level 31 and below. So if you have some emulator setup which has API level greater than 31, or you have some latest Android device, you can use .NET 9 as well. So the logic, flow, everything will be same, no change. So let's choose the .NET 8 version here, install it. Let's wait for it to get installed. Apply, I accept. Is it installed? Yes, it is installed. Save everything. Now after installing it, we need to do two things. We'll go to mauiprogram.cs. Here, first thing we need to do is in builder.services, we need to add the barebone basic authentication support. Here we'll say builder.services.add authorization core. This is the base core functionality. After this, we will go to the main router. This is routes.razor. Here we need to wrap this router in a cascading authentication state. This cascading authentication state component. Let me zoom it a bit more. 135. Yes, this one. We can remove this Microsoft ASP.NET component authorization. We can have it as using here, and because we are going to use this thing, this cascading authentication state and other components as well, so we can move this thing to underscore imports.razor so that we can use this namespace in each and every razor component, all these razor pages. So cascading authentication state, this is done, and we have in MAUI program we have this add authorization code. These two things are done. After that, we will be using authorization attribute on the pages where we need authentication support. So for this, in our routes.razor, we need to make one more change. Right now, if you see in found, we have this route view. So here we need to use authorize route view. It was just route view, which does not have authentication authorization support. We need to change it to authorize route view. Now it will have support for this. Okay, this is some false error, false warning actually. Save. So using these things, our basic barebone thing is set up. Now in order to use this, right now if you run it, it is going to give us an exception, and that exception is the way authentication works in .NET Blazor, basically with Blazor WebAssembly or Blazor Hybrid in .NET MAUI. It uses a class which is the authentication state provider. Authentication state provider, this class. Now if we go to this class, this authentication state provider, navigating to definition, this is an abstract class. That means we need to implement this class, we need to derive from this class, and we need to provide our logic for authentication. So this gives us authentication support, but we need to tell what means of authentication we need, from where we are going to get the authentication related stuff, right? Because we are the one who will say that okay, now we want user to be authenticated, now we want to revoke that authentication, and we want to check the authentication information from here, from this source. We need to have an implementation of this authentication state provider. Okay, so here I have this auth folder. Inside this, I'm going to create a new class. Okay. The name is up to you. Let's call it the custom auth state provider or just app auth state. It could be anything. Let's say app auth state provider. Okay. Make it public, and this should derive from authentication state provider. Authentication state provider. This thing. Now we have this error. We need to implement this. So let's implement abstract class. It gives us this get authentication state async, this method. Okay. Let's go to the MAUI program.cs and remove this thing, which we just added to check. Now we have this app auth state provider. Inside this, as we see, it has this one method, get authentication state async. So this is the method when our application first loads up. At that time, it calls this method, the Blazor calls this method to get the authentication state. And after that also sometimes it can call this to get the latest information. But for the first time, it is going to call this method for sure. So we need to have some logic which will provide the initial auth state, or we could say it get auth state at initialization, or app initialization we could say. Okay. Now if you see, the return type is task of authentication state. Okay. So right now we don't have any other information. So here what we can do, we can simply return an empty authentication state. Okay. So for this, what we can do, we can simply have a private read only static variable here. We'll say task of authentication state. Here we'll have simply task dot from result. Task dot result. What is happening here? Oh, name. We'll say underscore empty auth state task, something like this. And we are going to have task dot from result. Here we need to have authentication state. So new authentication state. Inside authentication, it needs a claims principal. We'll say new claims principal. Let's remove these and add these at as using. And in this claims, we'll see we can have the empty claim, or we can have this I identity one. Here we are going to have new claims identity. It's blank. It also has some other information, but we are not going to have anything else. We will just have this. So this is our empty auth state task, which we can return from here. For now, we are going to modify this thing, but right now we'll just use this only. Save it and we are good. There is some error. We need one more. All right. So this is the basic bare bone thing. Now, the way Blazor works, it is going to try to access this authentication state provider. Okay. So we need to tell whenever you need authentication state provider, you should get an instance of this app auth state provider. That means we need to register this authentication state provider with an implementation of app auth state provider. So we'll go our MAUI program.cs. Here we'll say builder.services.add singleton. Here we'll say whenever you need authentication state provider, you should get an instance of app auth state provider. This, because in this app auth state provider, we have provided a way to get the authentication state. All right. Now, for first step, this is fine. It will, when the app is loading up, it will simply call this, it will call this, it will get this thing. But after that, when we are on login page, So let's go to login page. From login async method, we are going to call our API. Let's quickly call our API. Here I'll say inject iAuth API. Okay, let's call it iAuth API. Here we'll say var login response equals await auth API dot login async, and it needs login request DTO, which we already have. So we'll say login model. Now we have this login response. We need to handle this login response. How to handle it? We need to pass this login response to our this auth state provider. How are we going to pass it? We are going to have a method here. We'll say public void, and here we can say, let's say login async only. And here we are going to get that login response DTO as a parameter. All right. Now, when we have this login response, from here we need to tell this authentication state provider that we have some different information now. So instead of using this empty auth state, you should use the new auth state which we are going to provide. Okay. Now, how we are going to provide it? If you see, we need to provide authentication state, this authentication state. So this is a step-by-step process. First, we need claims identity. Then we need claims principal. Then we need authentication state. So let's start with claims identity. So here we'll say identity equals new claims identity. Here we have a type authentication type, but we need to provide the login users information to this identity. So here we need to find some overload method which has list of claims. So here we have IEnumerable of claims. But with this, we also need the authentication type, because we can have multiple identities. We are going to use primary main identities. Authentication type is required in order to tell Blazor that we want to use this authentication type. This is kind of a key, you could say, key for this particular authentication. So we need this overload. First, IEnumerable of claim, a collection of claims. So this thing will have the information of the user. How we can get those? From login response, we can get the current logged in user. And from this current logged in user, we have this two claims method. If you remember, we created this two claims method, which gives us a claims array. We have these claims now. Have these claims. And then we have this authentication type, where in this class only we can have a private const string, let's say auth type. Now this type could be anything, app auth, or it could be anything. It's up to you. We just need to use it here. Now we have our claims identity. After this, we need to create a claims principal. Click create it. For principal equals new claims principal. Here we need to provide this identity. After this, we need our auth authentication state, this auth state. We'll say auth state equals new authentication state. Here we need to provide our principal. We have our principal. After this, we know that we have this. Oh, this is just empty auth state task, right? Okay, so I think we are good with this. But now we have this auth state, but we need to tell the authentication state provider that we have a different authentication state now. So for this, we have a method which is called notify authentication state changed. This method, which is defined in the base class, notify authentication state changed, which actually just invokes or raises this authentication state changed event, this one, which Blazor authentication internally uses and updates the UI components and all for the latest authentication changed. Okay, we can also use that if we want to. I'll show you that. But here we need to provide the task of authentication state, right? So we have this auth state. We just need to provide task dot from result and this auth state. Using this, we are telling one more. We are telling Blazor to notify whatever component or whatever action it needs to take on the basis of login information change. So the way we have login async, the same way we can have logout method. Login async, right? We are not using any async thing here. We can just have login, and here we can have just logout, and in logout we need to change this auth state. So here also after changing it, we need to call this notify authentication state method so that Blazor can know that this has been changed. But this time, instead of doing all these things, we will just have an empty auth state. We can simply get this thing, this task of authentication state. From here, we'll directly pass this thing. Notify authentication state changed, empty auth state. Right? Cool. So now we need to access these login and logout methods. So first we need login. This login method, we need to call it from this login page. But how would we call it? We have a registration in our MAUI program.cs where we say whenever you will try to access authentication state provider, you should get an instance of this one. But here in login page, if we are trying to access this thing, authentication state provider does not has any information of this login or logout because these are defined in this derived class. So that means we need to add this app auth state provider in MAUI program as well. So let's quickly do this. Builder.services.add singleton. This. Now we can simply inject this thing in our login page. Let's inject app auth state provider. And from this app auth state provider, here we can say dot login, not logout, just login, and we can provide our login response. After login response, we can simply say, I don't know, maybe navigation manager. We can navigate to home page. For that, we need to inject navigation manager. Let's call it navigation manager only. And using this, we'll say navigation manager dot navigate to and just go to the home page with the replace true because we don't want to come back to login page. You can skip this if you want to the application flow to when we press back button from here. If you wanted to come back to login page, you can remove this. But ideally, when we are logged in, then there is no point of going back to the login page. So using this, we are good. What this is saying, sync method awaits. We have await, but it is not able to figure it out. So we are good. Now there is one problem. From here, we are calling this login method, which we are good. It will come here. We will have it. But this time, when we are going to say that notify authentication state change, nothing is going to be happen. That is because this thing, this Blazor will inject this authentication state provider. We will ask for this. But here in MAUI program, what we are doing, we are implementing or adding a singleton instance of this one and this one. So this is not truly singleton. Now these two are going to be a different instances. But what we need, both of these should be the same instance, right? This is what we can directly use. And here we want the same instance so that when we are calling login or logout methods, the methods can propagate it to this authentication state provider. So here, instead of registering it like this, we need to somehow add the previous instance. For this, what we can do, we can remove this thing from here. And we have one overload method which takes a func of iService provider and returns authentication state provider. So here we can have SP, which is service provider. From service provider, we can get the previous instance. This instance. Here we can say get required service. We'll say app authentication state provider. Using these, what we are saying, first thing we are registering it as singleton, which is good. After that, we are saying whenever you need authentication state provider, you should come here and try to get the already registered instance of this app auth state provider. That means this is going to be the same instance. So now if we inject this app auth state provider, or we use this authentication state provider which Blazor internally uses, so both of these will result in the same instance. So we are going to have the same instance on the one we are using login logout methods, or the one which authentication state provider, the Blazor internally using. Both of these are going to be the same instance. Cool. So using this registration part is done. Our auth state login is done. Now how would we know that something has happened? So for this, let's do this. Let's go to the home page. Now the point is, how will we access the current logged in users information? So for this, Blazor gives us a authorized view, not authorized route view. Authorized route view is just for routes. This file. Here we have this authorized view, which is going to be a dynamic container for authorization related stuff. Inside authorized view, we have three things. First is authorizing. Right now it is trying to see or trying to get the authorizing authentication state. It's checking auth state. So when it calls the method get authentication status, when this is in this process, this is authorized. After that, two things can happen. Either user will be authenticated or it will be not. So if user is not authenticated, in that case we have this not authorized. So it works for both authentication and authorization. So user is not authorized. So not. Then we have one more version which is authorized. Here we say user is authorized. These three things. Now when user is authorized, in that case we might want to access users information. So here, how can we access the current logged in users information? For this, inside this authorized view, we have access to a special variable that is called context. So this context is of type authentication state, this one. So on this context, we can access user, which is claims principal, and which is going to be same claims principal which we added here, this claims principal. Okay, that means from here we can access everything. It has identity, which has these claims which we are getting from user. That means this login response DTO, this login user, these claims. So we can access all these claims. How are we accessing this? We have these methods, but we have a shorthand to get the username. So for this, here we can say @context dot user dot identity name. Here we'll say user is authorized. Then we can say username this. Save it. Say name. So this thing is on home page, right? Let me copy this thing and add this same thing on login page as well. Okay? On top of login page also, I'm having the same thing. We can have this authorized view anywhere, because inside this authorized view we have these three different options. On login page, this is never going to be called. It is going to be called only when this stuff happens. Okay, now let's quickly try to run this and see if this thing is working. Then we will enhance this further. This thing is still incomplete. We need a lot more stuff to make it completely end to end, but The functionality should work now, the basic functionality for single use. Let me do this. Let me put a breakpoint here on get authentication status or maybe on login as we don't need on login, right? Let's have just on get authentication status only. And it is going to take some time. Let's wait for it to be. Backup is almost there. Yes. See, loading and breakpoint came. If you see in get authentication status, we'll continue and we are on home page and here it says not authorized with spelling mistake, but we are good. Now let's go to login. Not authorized. Yes. On login, we can have anything because we don't have any validation logic, not validation with actual API call. It is just mock API which just does not use this. So let's click on this login. Then we can see user is authorized. Name is a prince. That means this worked. We have this authorized state. We have user is authorized. We have this name. Let's go to the login page. Here also we can say user is authorized and name is prince. That means this thing worked. Now that notify authentication state changed, this method what it does, it actually sends that message, raises that event which these authorized views are subscribed to, and they simply swap these things on the basis of that notify authentication state. This thing we can quickly check in here, maybe in this login flow, this thing. Let's add a button to log out. Okay, so this thing will be in logout, the nav menu, in layout, nav menu.razor. Now what should happen? This login, this should come when user is not logged in. And if user is logged in, then we should have a logout button here. All right, so let's quickly do this. Right now, what we have, we directly have this login, which will be rendered always. So we don't want that. Let's cut this, add authorized view here. Inside this, let's have a not authorized and then paste this. So this authorized view, not authorized, authorizing, authorized, all these tags, these does not generate any HTML tag. Okay. These just checks if the underline template needs to be rendered or not. That's all what they do. So not authorized, move it further. If we are authorized, that means we'll say authorized. In that case, we will have a logout button. So here let's quickly have just button. We'll say button, type button. I don't know how the UI will look. Class btn, btn sm, btn danger, and just have a logout. And here we'll call a method. We'll say at the rate, just say logout, sorry, at the rate on click equals, we'll say logout. And let's define this logout method here. We'll have at the rate code block. We'll say private void logout. And how are we going to log out? We have a logout method in our app auth state provider. We are going to inject this auth state provider in this thing in nav menu. Inject app auth state provider, app auth state provider, and we need to add this using. Let's move this using to same underscore imports so that we don't need to inject it wherever we need this. So it will be available throughout the application. Now we can see here we'll say a auth state provider. Right now we can use this auth state provider dot logout. Right now I'm just have here only. After logout, later we'll move this to maybe login page. But right now we are good. I just want to show you that these things actually gets changed automatically. Okay, let's stop this app and run it again. Let's wait for it to build and deploy. Oh, it's fairly quick this time. Okay, loading. We have this breakpoint. Continue. Login page. We are not authorized. This is the thing we need to enhance because we already logged in. So we don't want user to log in again and again whenever they are opening the app. So we'll fix this thing. Right now, let's go to the login page. Here we are not authorized. Here we can see just login, not log out. Okay. Let's log in. We are logged in now. User is authorized. Name is this. And here we see logout button. Right now, the login button is not there. Okay. And here we have user is authorized and name is this. Now pay attention. I'm going to click on this logout button. So you see, it automatically got changed to not authorized. And here we can see login again. So that means this thing is working. It is changing. Now, if you want to run some logic whenever this authentication state is getting changed, you can do that as well. For that, what you can do, you can simply have the constructor of this auth state provider. And here, you can simply subscribe to notify was that authentication state change. Authentication state change. This is an event where you can have your own logic if you want. Changed plus equals thing, and here you can have your own logic if you want to do something whenever authentication state is changing. That means we are going from logout to login or login to logout. Although we have these separate methods, but you can use this as well if you want to. Okay, and how would you know if the user is logged in or not? Here you have this task. What you will do, you will simply say var auth state equals, you will say await task. Now you have this auth state, which is this authentication state. On this auth state, you can have user, which is claims principal. Here you can check identity. Here you can check is authenticated. This can be null because if user is not logged in, then it will be null. If this is equals, let's say true. Or better to use the pattern matching is true. Then we know user is logged in. If that's not the case, we can know user is logged out. Add your code if you want to do something in this case. If you want to do something in this case, same thing we can say here, user is logged in if you want to. So this is up to you. In most of the cases, I don't need this, so I can skip this. I'm having it here for your reference only. Okay. Now we are good. We have login, we have logout, we have this authentication state change. We saw how can we get the currently logged in users information. But now there is one more thing. Right now, what we are doing, we are getting the currently logged in users information in the HTML template. What if we want to get that information in our code? For example, we need user ID. Maybe we are performing some operation on the in API side. We want to pass the logged in users ID to somewhere, to API or to anything. That means how to access this in our code block in C# code. For that, what we can do, if you remember, in our routes.razor page, we added this cascading authentication state. So what it does, it passes the authentication state as a cascading parameter to its children, the way cascading parameters work. Do let me in the comment if you guys know about cascading parameters in Blazor. If not, maybe drop a comment and I will plan a dedicated video for that. So what it does actually, it provides some value to its children hierarchy. This value is going to be provided inside this router, inside this found authorized route view, everywhere. Inside this authorized route view, it will have all these things. We pages in the inside this home.razor. If we have some other components, it will be provided passed to the complete hierarchy. So we can access the cascading parameter inside the children hierarchy anywhere. So here we can access that thing. But how we are going to access that? Most of the time, cascading parameters work on the basis of types. Here, what it does, this cascading authentication state, this thing, here we have public. It is going to be a task of authentication state. This parameter name is up to you. You can name it whatever you want. It will not matter. The type matters. Okay. Here we can say auth state task like this. This needs to be a cascading. So cascading parameter attribute and this type. These two are the required thing. This name could be anything. Now you have this auth state task. Here you can simply say override, let's say on initializing. Here you can access this auth state task. You can do whatever you want to do. Let's say this where auth state equals await. We'll say auth state task. Okay. Here we can say, let's do this. Let's have a p tag here, normal p tag. Here we'll say uh, user ID from code, something like this. Okay. We can have private int user ID. Here we'll simply print this underscore user ID. Then in here we have this auth state. Here we can simply check the same thing. We'll say auth state dot user dot identity is true. Sorry, identity dot is authenticated is true. So I did something in here. Did I use direct identity is authenticated? All right. If this is true, we can get the user ID from auth state dot user dot claims. From these claims we can get that. So we can say first, so this time we know that the user is logged in. So we must have this claim. C dot type, C dot type equals claim types dot name identifier, because this is the thing which we added for ID. Remember in here for ID we are using claim types dot name identifier. That's why we are using it here. On this we are going to have value. It is going to be of type string, but this user ID is of type int. So we need to convert it to int. Say convert dot to int 32 and we are going to have it. Now there is one more way to access this, slightly shorter. Instead of using user dot claims dot first, we have auth state dot user dot find first, this helper method, which is a shorthand of this thing. We can directly provide the claim type here like this dot value. So both of these things are same. Okay, so you can use this one or this one. If you want to explicitly access the claims, you can use this one. So both of these are same. You can use whatever you want to. It's up to you. But we said this. If it is not logged in, maybe let's do this. Default value we are going to have -1, but it is not going to make any sense because if we are not logged in, it will have the default 0. If we are logged in, it will have the value of the current logged in user, whatever we have. Let's quickly see if this thing is working. I'm going to stop this and I'm going to run this. Okay, loading, continue. We are on home page. It says user ID from code is 0, which we know it is 0 and not authorized. Let's go to login page. Let's log in. We are on home page. We can see user ID from code 1 and user is authorized. Name is this one. So user is authorized. Name is this one. This is coming from HTML template using this approach. And this thing is coming from our code. This is how we can access in code. Now let me show you one more thing. What if I log out? It says not authorized, but here it says user ID from code 1, which is not 1 right now. So what we should do right now, what we are doing, we are modifying this user ID in case of on initialized async, right? But if we want to do something, maybe we need to have this case whenever we are calling some API. For example, let's say maybe here I have some button which calls the API. Let's say I have button class and we say call API with user ID, something like this. Then I have some method here. We'll say private async task call API with the user ID, something like this. Now we should not use this user ID in this manner. Now what would happen? This user ID could be stale. So instead, what we should do whenever we need the user's information, we should use this method. So this is how it should happen. This code should come here whenever we need anything. It should be like this to have the latest information, right? It should be like this. All right. So using this, I told you how to access the information in here. But now, if I log in, close the application, come back to this, the information is lost. That should not happen, right? So whenever we are coming to the application, it calls this get authentication statusing method. Here we should have the authentication state from somewhere. That means when we are going to sleep, or when we say going to sleep, that means app is going to sleep or app is going to be closed, it should have the current logged in users information. So because we are in .NET MAUI, we can have that information stored in database, in SQLite database. We can have that information stored in secure storage, or we can have that information stored in shared preference with preferences API, which .NET MAUI provides. It's up to you where you want to store it. But for the simplicity, we are going to use preferences API. But if you are working with Blazor WebAssembly, you can use the browser's local storage or session storage. It's up to you. All right. So here we need a storage. You can have a separate service for this, but I'm going to use inside this only. So here I'll say private const string, let's say storage key. Okay. This name is up to you. It could be anything. So here what we'll do, when we are logging in, we are notifying authentication state changed. After this, what we can do, we can simply say preferences or default set, and here we can simply save the information. So here we'll say storage key and then value, and it supports other thing, but I have seen some problems with this, so I almost always store the string representation of the logged in response. It's login response. So here we'll simply say JSON serializer dot serialize and just serialize this thing. Right now what we are doing, whenever we are logging in, we are simply saving it to preference, and when we are logging out, we should remove this thing from preference. So we'll say preferences default dot remove storage key. On logout, remove this key from the storage. On login, add this to the storage. And when app is coming for the first time, the get authentication status thing, this thing is happening. Here we will access this information from here. What we can do, we can simply say var serialized auth state. We could say this. So serialized login response equals, we'll say preferences dot default dot get. Here we'll say string key, which is storage type, and we are going to have some default value, so we'll say null, and we need to tell it what type of value it could be. It could be nullable string. Okay, now we know if we have this information, it will be written as string. If we don't have it, it is going to return this null value. Here we can check if serialized response is null, or maybe let's do the opposite. If it is not null, we can say we have login response in storage, references storage. We'll say parse it you like this. So how we are going to parse it? We are going to simply say login response DTO, or we can simply say var login response equals. Here we are going to deserialize it. We'll say JSON serializer or deserialize. What type it is going to be? It is going to be this login response DTO. What is the value which we want to deserialize? Which is this serialized login response. Now we are going to have this login response. That means we are at this stage now. From here, you can call this method, or maybe you can do this thing again. It's better to call this method because we already have it. Here we'll say login with this login response. Okay, this is not null, which we know, so we can simply like this. Now while it is fine, it is done, it will come here, it will try to do this thing again. So we can actually have some flag and skip this if we want to. This we'll say full save to storage, and let's have a default value as true so that the existing code needs not to be changed. And we'll check this thing here. If save to storage true, then only we'll save it. From here we'll say save to storage to false, because here we already got from the storage. That means this is already there in the storage, so we can skip this step if we want to. All right, now it will handle that thing. What thing? If we are logged in right now, we close the app, open it again, it will get this login information. Okay, save it, and let's try to check it if it works. Okay, breakpoint got hit. Let's try to step through here. Serialized login response, we are going to have null because this is for the first time when we implemented this thing. So it will skip this. Fine, login, nothing is going to be changed. Now let's put a breakpoint in login as well. Okay, we are here. Let's go to the login method. Login. We are here in login. We got the claims, list of 3 claims, principal, auth state, notify, save to storage is true. It is going to save, continue, and we are good. We can see the user information. User is authorized and all. Let's stop the app and start again. Okay, this time it should again come here in get authentication state async. It came. This time should get this information. It has this serialized user information. We have this login response. We have this thing. It came to login. This time it will not save to storage. Continue. And now we can see the user is authorized, name is Prince, but user ID from code is 0. Why it is 0? Because in home.razor, we were here when that thing was happening. Okay, so that's why we didn't have this thing here in user. On initialize, it did not work, it did not use, so we skipped this because this was not in authorized mode. That means this page came before that operation was performed. Now if we go to some other page and if we come back to this page, then we will have this information because this is how it should work. So for this to understand completely, we need to understand how the Blazor's component lifecycle works. This is related to that one. We should not have this thing here. Cool. Now while it works, stop it. Everything is working fine. Now let's do one more thing. How would we force that what page needs to be logged in for login availability, or which page should not get open if user is not logged in? For that, we have an attribute that is authorize, comes from Microsoft ASP.NET Core authorization. So we can move this thing also to the underscore import short tracer. Now we are saying that this is authorized. Okay. Now let's try to run this again. And now we are going to see some strange behavior. By default, it is going to open this page, but this is added with authorize attribute. We have this get authentication state, continue, login. This is fine. It worked fine. Why it worked fine? Because we had authorize attribute. It tried to do this, but before that, it wanted to check if user is authorized or not. Now let's do this. I'm going to log out, close the app, open it again. Okay, now let's see if we are able to see the home page data. Loading, get authentication state async, continue, and we have this about and not authorized. This is not home page. Although it shows home, but because on home page we see hello world, welcome to your new app. This text is not here. That means this is not the one which is getting rendered here. This is something else. Now from where it is coming? If we go to routes, here by default, if user is not authorized, this text gets rendered. Now, how can we change it? Authorized route view. Right now, this is self-closing. We can change it to opening and closing tags. Inside this, we can have authorizing and authorize, same thing, authorizing and not authorized. For authorized case, this is already there. The current page is going to be rendered, but in not authorized, we can have any code here. Here, let's have the, let's maybe have class text danger, and let's say h3 user is not to view this page, something like this. Okay, let's try to run the app again. Now on home page we should see this message, because on home page we are saying that this is an authorized page. See, we are here, loading, get authentic state, user is not authorized to view this page. But if you go to counter, it works. If you go to weather, it works. If you go to login, it works, of course. But if you go to home, we can see this thing because we are saying that home page is authorized page. Now, what should happen right now? If we have some authorized page, those should not be here. Those should be inside the authorized tag, the way we have logout. First thing is this. Now, what if our entire app is inside the protected pages? Basically, our entire app needs to be, user needs to be authenticated to access all the pages except login and register pages. Basically, what we can do, we have this authorized attribute on this home page. Same thing. we'll go to, let's say, counter. We are going to have this authorized attribute on counter. We are going to have this authorized attribute weather. So if we have the authorized attribute on all the pages, we can have those on all pages separately, or we can have one underscore imports.razor file. This is how these underscore imports.razor work. Underscore imports.razor gets executed for all the pages inside the same level, or maybe we could say for all the children or all the hierarchy of its parent. So for this underscore imports.razor, the parent is components folder. So whatever we have this underscore imports.razor, that is going to be applied in this components folder. So in this components folder, we have routes, we have pages, we have layout, everything. Same thing which we are going to do in this pages folder. If we add one more underscore imports.razor, this name is the thing, underscore imports.razor. I have this file in this pages. Here we can simply have this attribute authorized. Now this attribute authorized is going to be applied to the parent of this underscore imports, which is pages, and inside this pages, whatever elements we have, it is going to apply to all of these. This is how it works. Okay, so this is also one thing which you can do if you want to. Instead, what you can do, you can have a maybe one more folder where you are going to have protected pages. In same way, the way we have that authorized, login page should not be authorized. So here we can have an attribute that allow anonymous. Same classic .NET stuff, .NET Core, ASP.NET Core stuff. So this is one way. This should be excluded from authorized. That's why we are doing this. Okay. This I showed you how you can do this, but right now I already added this on all the pages, so we can skip this files. I just showed you, you can do this. Now if I start this application, what is going to happen? All the pages are going to yell at us that you are not authorized to view this page. We are here, first page, which is be slash home page, which has this authorized attribute. Let's remove this breakpoint. We don't need this breakpoint. User is not authorized. Let's open counter. User is not authorized. Let's open weather. User is not authorized. Now if you go to login, then we are going to have the login page. Okay, but this is not how it should happen. When we are starting the app, somehow we should check if user is not logged in. User should automatically get redirected to the login page, right? In our case, this app, because all the pages should be authorized, so user should be authorized to access any of the page. So there should be some automatic mechanism, right? So for this, what we can do, hold on, let me add the charger. All right. So that message which we saw, user is not authorized, that means that is the piece of code which is getting rendered whenever user is not logged in. That is in route storage. This piece of code. Now, when we have something here which will trigger the redirect to login logic. Okay. So for this, what we can do, we can simply have a component. Could be C# component or just Razor component. Here we can say redirect to login. Okay. This is going to be an empty component. There is not going to be any HTML markup. Here we are just going to have override. My IntelliSense got broken, so let's inject navigation manager. We are going to call it navigation manager only. Here I'm going to say protected override void on initialized. Inside this, we are going to have navigation manager dot navigate to. Here we can have slash login. Just login. Okay, and here also we can have replace to true because we don't We are here, we are moving away from this page. That means we want user to be logged in. So we don't want to have that back button functionality here. That does not make sense. We can have this replaced too. And then what we are going to do, we are going to call this redirect to login in our routes.razor. Where is it? Instead of this P, we're going to comment this out, and here we are going to say redirect to login. That means now what is going to happen whenever we are in this zone, not authorized, it is going to render this component. And what this component does, there is no HTML markup for this. Whenever this component is getting initialized, it is going to use this navigation manager and going to navigate to login page. And our login page is allow anonymous. That means it is going to render this login thing. And after logging in, we are going to redirect to somewhere else. Okay. Now, if you remember on logout, we were not doing anything. We go to our logout, which was in our nav menu, right? Nav menu, I said after logout, we need to redirect back to login page. Now, this thing is going to be automatically handled because whenever we'll say logout and we are on any page other than login. So, doing logout, it will remove the thing. Let's say we were on home page or I don't know, any of the page. Let's say we were on counter page. We pressed logout from there. Now we are on counter page only. It will say, okay, the counter page needs authorized attribute. That means it needs users to be authenticated, but that user is not authenticated. So it is going to go back to the routes, this case, and here we have redirect to login. So it will redirect to login. Enough talking. Let's see it in action. We are not logged in. So it is going to go to the home page, and from home page, it is automatically going to redirect back. It will not render home page, anything on the home page. Loading, and we are on login page. Okay. If we'll go to any of the page, it will go to login page only. After logging in, we are here, login. Let's remove the breakpoints. We don't need any of these breakpoints now. Continue. We are on home page now. Good. Now we can go to counter page. We can go to weather page. Let's stop the application. Open it again. This time it should directly go to the home page because right now we are already logged in. So that authorized attribute is already satisfied. And which is not. User is authorized, name Abhay Prince. Why it came to login page? I think it's not right. Did we do something wrong? Let's try. We have log out. It went to login page. Stop. Run. Let's go to the home page. Where is home? Let's put a breakpoint here as well. Continue. We are here now on home page. We are logged in. Continue. What are we doing? On home page. We are okay. Did we do something wrong in routes? Not authorized. Redirect to login. It's redirecting us to login. It's not. Let's quickly put a breakpoint here as well. Stop. Let's make it full method. Let's see what is happening. We'll try to debug it. Let's breakpoint. Why can't I put a breakpoint? Redirect to login. It was working, right? Breakpoint could not be inserted at this point. Let me close the Visual Studio and open it again. It's not right with Visual Studio. Maybe because of this only that thing is not working. We'll see. Okay, let's try now. Yes, we can add breakpoint here. Let's try to run it again. Okay, loading. Get authentication state async. And we are on this page, which is direct to login. And from where we got here, do we have any login status here? No, right? If I continue, then we are on home page. Strange. It is strange. Let me try to see what is happening here. Get authentic sync. Let's try one more time. I'll see at what point it goes to that. So first thing, it came here. It's fine. Got here. Got the login response. It went to login. Oh, my bad. There's no problem with the flow. Actually, the problem is here only. After login, what we are doing, because there we can see the user is logged in. That means this thing worked. But after that, it comes here and returns this empty auth state task. Our It should actually return from here only. What should it return? It should return the current auth state. That means this thing. Okay. We need to access this thing here. Now, how can we access this? For this, the way we have this empty auth state task, we can have one more parameter. We'll say private, not read only, the task of authentication state. This we'll say underscore current auth state tasks. This auth state task. Okay, and we can have a default value as this empty. Okay, then we are going to have this underscore current auth state task, which we can return from here. Okay, now we need to set this when we are logging in. When we are logging in here, we'll say current auth state task equals this thing. Or what we can do, maybe we can set this current auth state task in our this authentication state change here. Here we can say current auth state task equals task directly. Okay. Then from here we can return it. So if we log in or log out, in logout we'll pass an empty auth state task. In notify, and notify is going to call this method. Here we'll set this thing, always latest. In login case also, we are calling this notify authentication state task with this auth state, that means this latest. After this notify, it is going to call this method, and we are going to have the current auth state task as always the latest one. From get authentication state async, we are going to return this. In login, we'll set it. Did it work directly, or there could be some delay, right? So maybe we should not have it here. Let's do this. Let's do this. I'm not sure if it will always be in the current sync. So what we can do in logout, we can set it to the empty auth state task. Okay. Here we can say current auth state equals this thing. Then we can pass this current auth state. Now we are good. Here also we can directly pass this because we already set this. Now we are good. Now quickly we can remove all the breakpoints now, because now we are sure it will work, because that was our mistake. That's why it was showing the user is logged in, but it was showing logout because it went to that redirect to login because of this empty auth state. Now let's quickly run it. We'll see it should go to the home page directly now. We removed all the breakpoints. Loading the home page with correct information. Cool. Now when we are good, we have everything. If you remember, in login response, we had token as well, right? Login response, we have token, which we'll need to pass to our HTTP client factory or delegate the delegating handler if we are using, or refit we are using. We need to pass this token to our API. So we need to access this token as well, right? Right now, where is this token? Token is in login response. If you go to our auth state provider, here what we are doing, we are getting claims and all, we are getting the current auth state task, but we are actually skipping the token. We are setting the token as a part of this login response only in the key in this preferences, and we are getting this login response, but we are not having the token anywhere. So for that, what we can do inside this app auth state provider only, we can have a property for token. We can have a nullable property for token. Okay? We can have this get and private set. Then we can set this token whenever we are logging in, right? Here we can say token equals login response token, and now we are good. Now how we can access this token? So in our maybe delegating handler, we can inject this app's auth state provider or anywhere. In Refit, we can have this in authorization value getter. There we can have this too. For example, let's say on weather forecast page, this one here, what we can do? We can simply inject app auth state provider provider auth state provider. From this auth state provider, we can access the token. Here, anywhere we can say 5 token. We can say app auth state provider dot token, and we can see this token. Now after this, you see, if we have this token, we can have the current logged in users information as well. Similarly, the way we are having it here. So this is also a different way of accessing the user information. Right now, what we are doing, we are having this thing. We need to get the auth state. We need to check the user is authenticated or not. Then we are getting this information. This is a way, but we can have one more way. In this app auth state provider, we can simply have a property user, or maybe we can say current user. Logged in user type, we'll say current user. Same thing, get and private set. Here we can say current user. This we are going to say in login, current user equals login response dot user. Now one more thing, we need to reset these in logout, right? So token, we are going to say null. Current user as well, we are going to say. Then let's say on counter, let's inject app auth state provider auth state provider. Here we can access all the information. Here we can say let's have a UL. Here we'll say allies name. You can say at the rate auth state provider current user dot name. Here we don't need to check if user is logged in or not, because we have this authorized attribute. But if you have somewhere where you can have not authorized user access that page, then you will need to check it. Or you can have simple helper property here, something like maybe prop rule, you'll say is logged in, something like this. Then you can simply check current user is not, like this. Then you can access this problem. So there are going to be multiple ways to handle all these things. ID, name, and let's say email. This is one way which you can use it. So, and you can use it anywhere in this thing also. Let's say var user ID equals, here also you can say auth state provider dot current user dot user ID, or just that ID. So using this, save it. Let's quickly run it. So this was the final piece. There could be different ways to access the information. Main thing is this only. It gives us kind of flexibility to do this. I use this approach a lot. Okay, let's see where this is the application. We can see this. Let's go to the weather page. Here we can say this token, some secure token value, which we have. Go to counter. Here we can see ID, name, email, and all the things are. Alright, on home page, we are getting this user ID from C Sharp. This thing is from HTML markup. Alright, so this is how we can implement auth in our .NET MAUI Blazor hybrid application. Now let me tell you one more thing. This entire thing, this was mostly related to Blazor. So this is the same way you can handle auth, you can implement auth in Blazor WebAssembly application, for example, or Blazor server application, interactive Blazor application basically. The only thing which is going to be changed, that is going to be where are we storing the information. The preferences is .NET MAUI specific. When you will go to the Blazor WebAssembly, you are going to use local storage or session storage. When you are going to use the interactive server Blazor, that case you are going to have some different implementation, maybe protected browser storage, so that it can store the information at both the ends and it can get the information on startup from the storage. All right. So do let me know comment if you guys learned something new today in this video. This was very long, but I think it was detailed video, and I hope you guys uh, learned something new and you understood how the auth works inside this Blazor. All right. So that's all for this video. Please like this video, share this video, subscribe my channel. I'll be back soon with some other cool video. Till then, bye bye. Happy coding.